This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Michelle, can we start with a roll call for this evening?
Yes. Thomas Walsberry.
Present.
David Fagnan.
Present.
Steve Litwin.
Present.
All right, I will make a motion to open this evening's meeting at 5:02 p.m.
Second.
Thomas Walsberry.
Yes.
David Fagnan.
Yes.
Steve Litwin.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carried.
All right. First item on our agenda is public speak. All right, we don't have anyone joining us that is not speaking to something on the agenda. So I also believe item number 2, are we expecting the mayor this evening, Greg?
No.
All right, then we will move on to item number 3, approval of the June 15th, 2020 meeting minutes. Was everyone able to review what Michelle sent out?
Yes.
Any issues with them as they were prepared?
No.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the June 15th, 2020 meeting minutes.
Second.
Thomas Walsberry.
Yes.
David Fagnan.
Yes.
Steve Litwin.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carried.
All right, item number 4 is our continued discussion of tie
Did
and
you
bond.
sign the minutes?
I did not. Oh, I just put them in my file.
Okay.
I bought her.
You took them, I saw.
I took them. All right, item number 4, discussion of the tie and bond information for rate setting. We have a revised packet and presentation.
Yes, sir.
Let's take the floor, sir.
Thank you. So I just wanted to preface the meeting tonight with just a comment that what is shown here is sort of very draft. And what you're going to see is what I experienced when I was working on this and I was balancing between the rate impacts and the scheduling of capital. You start to feel the tension between the two. And I think that what's going to come down to is, taking a hard look at what, was critical 6-7 years ago. Absolutely, let me take that back. There's 2 ways to look at capital. We have to do this because something's going to happen if we don't, and it is what it is. And then there's these are all the other things like those fire hydrants that we want to get done, and how can we balance the two? And it really is an iterative process where you kind of go back and forth. So I just want to caveat that when we get to the capital, this is not the be-all, end-all of the schedule for the capital projects, that's going to require a little more discussion, and there's a couple of items that still need to be costed. So this is the same overall template that we used last time. So I'm going to skip through some of the parts that maybe we went through before, and focus on those other areas. But just to kind of gloss over in case anybody has any questions, are processes that you're projecting your expenses, which are also referred to as revenue needs, over this next, we looked at 10 years, keeping in mind that, anything more than 3 to 5 years starts to get kind of a little more speculative. And then we take that from your operating expenses, your existing debt and capital, and of course capital is the biggest driver of rate increases. And then we look at, to project the revenues, is looking at your water use, your water trends, and what would we need to do to rates to provide that amount of revenue to fund those projects. So it's basically I look at it as the ultimate goal of this effort is to fund the capital plan and then find a way to make that work. So first we're going to talk about sewer. Sewer is the bigger utility and I think the bigger challenge. The water was a little more straightforward. So the first thing we do is we look at the operating expenses. So we look back at the last 4 years of data and then looked at the 23 budget and how that looked. So basically all the projected operating expenses are based on the 23 budget escalated by these factors shown here. What we have, or what we're showing is for personnel-related services, 3% annual escalator, and for basically everything else, 5%. Right now, the hardest thing in the world to do right now is come up with cost escalators. But we want to have something that's, I don't know, reasonable, but not, let's just say I'm looking for comments on that. If you guys think later that, you need to change those. And then a second, I guess, preface to this whole thing is that we suggest that, this becomes a living document and you revisit it every year. So you say, okay, what did the water use actually look like? What did the expenses actually look like? And you kind of just keep adjusting. So this is like those things they show with EF Hutton, these are projections, so take that as it goes. So with the capital, I'll just go through this a little bit to just bring back people where it came from. So most of this came from the IWRMP that was completed in 2016. A lot of the numbers refer to 2015, so.
A lot of the data was collected in 15, 16.
Yeah.
Finalized plan was in 2018.
Okay, right. So we took those costs, we escalated them to 2022, and then the cost that's shown here as project cost is that 2022 value. And then for the escalated cost shown as number 4, that's escalated to when the start year of the project would be. So in this case, start year is when the money hits the enterprise. So if it's a debt, it's the first year of debt repayment, or if it's a what we call rate funded, or it's just called PAYGO or cash or reserves. It's all this. It's all not debt funded. That's the year that the cost is incurred. So in the status column there, you'll note that there's some projects that are added. Some were combined. So since the last time, for example, there were a number of sub-projects or items for Mount Tom pump station improvements. So just in the interest of, this is already taking 2 slides, but in the interest of not being 5, I aggregated them. So you'll see there's a couple of those for Mount Tom, for wastewater treatment plant, aeration and outfall upgrades. That was an added project. Belt press, we just basically put in a number for that, a placeholder number, just to give some depth to it. There's still a couple things that are missing, I think, but so wastewater treatment plant upgrades, phase 2, for example, there was a number of things that weren't outfall and aeration. I just assumed that those would be grouped into a project. So having said that, when you get to the point where you're going to think about doing that, I would expect a fresh look and go through and make sure everything that you need to get included is in there. In terms of the status too, we had taken the IWRMP projects, the summary table, and the DPW went through them and graded them in terms of priority. So HP1 was high priority, N2 was like a next level, and what I'm not showing here is I added a numeric priority because just to make it easier at sorting them. And what you'll notice is that there's some things in here that I pushed up or down necessarily out of that priority just because I wanted to talk about it and I thought it made sense. So that is the big caveat, that this is all I expect, Greg, that you to come back and say, well, okay, let's revisit this. And what I would see is a similar session to the one we went through projects, but this one is a little more nitty gritty where you say, okay, what is this year is like got a lot of expenses in it. Can we move that another year? Geez, I don't know. And you kind of just go back and forth. So, and some of them has said like annual cost for stormwater. I just moved it up because it was supposed to be an annual cost. I figured, well, let's see what that looks like in a sooner year rather than pushing it off later. Without going through all of these, and then I broke it down. One of the elements to a rate study that is, I think, surprising to people is a lot of it is to express to stakeholders, which is you gentlemen, where's the money going? Where's the money coming from? Why are we spending it? When are we spending it? So this just gives you an idea of, what areas of your system or systems the money is going for. And you can see a lot of it is for treatment and a lot of it is for pump stations. What I didn't show here that I have in the model that I can show you is I also just broke it down by wastewater treatment plant, which even though it's in the same enterprise, that's just how they break it out, so that's how I kept it. So we can just see, it's basically collection system versus wastewater treatment facility, and then stormwater. And what I would show you if it was on here was that the stormwater costs, at least for capital, are maybe 5%. So I think some of that, frankly, may need to be fleshed out more in terms of identifying costs for those projects, but in general, it's a very small amount of the overall capital. So, and we can go through this more, but I thought that kind of sort of touch the other side, and then if you want to come back, we could talk about what projects are where, and some of them are missing. And then, Greg, I had some questions on, for example, there was a pump station replacement or elimination project that was on the IEP and IUP rather, and there was a bunch of pump station individual elements. I just want to confirm that they were all included in there, and that the little gap analysis to make sure that the things that I thought were aggregated are in fact covered. But the challenge is that when I looked at the priority, I summarized it by priority, and 25 out of 35 million was like relatively high priority. So that's where it just becomes, a combination of thin slicing and some decision making to say, well, yes, this was identified, yes, it's important, but we were out there last week and we think it's okay, we can move that behind this project, that kind of thing. And it's, this is not easy work. It's hard. I don't mean the work, but I mean the decisions are difficult because, it's, one, you can't tear up the whole town, the whole plant, or all your pump stations all at once anyway. And two, you have to pace it to some degree in order to maintain reasonable cost. So when we take that, the next step we come over to is basically forms the top half of the pro forma, the expense side. So we have the operating expenses on here, and like I say in that note 1 there is that everything's projected off 2023 with the escalators that were shown. Indirects, which is the cost reimbursement from the enterprise back to the different offices and proportions of the city, in addition to fringe benefits for the employees, your share of healthcare and whatnot. I base those at 4.5% per year, but the cost jumped up pretty high from 20 to 21. So that might be something to just think about, or those healthcare costs can be kind of tricky to escalate too. So basically the goal here is just to show you what these are based on, what the assumptions are, and that the entire model is very fluid. And I have it open in the background if you guys at the end want to see what the horse trading looks like and how it affects, how one affects the other, we can do that. So for example, that if you say, well, let's make it 5.5%, it's fluid. Everything just rolls through and you revise it. So I kept the operating expenses, like I said, for sewer and wastewater treatment plant. That's how they were broken down, so that's what we kept. The stormwater is built into those, and there was an apportionment before of what that could look like. Again, it's not a huge amount of the expenses, but since it's not identified separately, I left it the way it was. And then the capital, actually, Greg, on the number 3 there where it says capital expenses, budget capital, I wanted to talk about that with you because a lot of times an enterprise or a utility will carry a certain amount of capital in their budget every year. And then when you look at the capital improvement plan, you're like, well, it's really not that. This is for like hydrant parts and whatnot. So I left it as an option, and I put the 21 and 22 capital amounts in there as budget capital. So you can separate it if you want to carry something, going forward that, because this is the integration of that larger capital plan into your annual budgeting. So if we use it, you use it. If you don't, you don't. That's fine. But it just gives you an opportunity to keep them separate and not confuse them. And then these costs, the sewer, the wastewater treatment plant, and stormwater, are all from that CIP, and those are the annualized costs that, regardless of whether it's debt or, I take it back. Those are the annualized costs for the non-debt funded, and then we show again, because I want to be able to show you where the money's going, or where the funding's needed. We showed new debt service for stormwater, and then new debt service for wastewater or water treatment plant. And then down below, finally, is the existing debt service for, the notes that you have, which are, pretty minimal and going down or decreasing over time. So we take that and we sum it all up, and we can see, where the costs are going.
I think it's important to mention that those numbers are low because we have not made significant capital investments.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
Well, and that's what we were talking about, a little bit before the meeting, is it's one of the hardest things to deal with is, for lack of a better word, underfunded utility that, so an example on the water side, there's, I think, 2 years of debt left, and that's great. But that means that, another way of looking at it is there hasn't been any big projects in 18 years. So,
Right.
It's, like I said, it's a difficult place to be in terms of, having to deal with this and play catch up. So, number 5, yeah, there was a price in there for that pump station elimination project design. So again, this is very difficult to not fall in the weeds, but when projects are estimated, they usually include engineering, contingency, and construction. And that's fine when it's 5 years out. When it starts to get really close, you need to break out that engineering because that's a first cost. So you need to plan for that.
Before.
Right, and then think about the timing, like I said. So for wastewater treatment plant upgrades, well, it might take more than a year to plan and design it, and then more than a year to construct it. So the timing becomes a little trickier. So kind of as I think about it, you're kind of pulling it apart as it comes closer to you. It's not to use my endless analogies, but it's like your car at night, in the headlights. You see the stuff that's in front of you in pretty good detail. In the back, you can't tell, is that a moose or a deer or, whatever. So the farther away it is, the more round it could be. But we want to, confirm that designs are covered and that, and also I made some assumptions on design funding that you would use like a 5-year ban or debt for that. And that's something that the city would need to feed back because everybody has different opinions. But the project, like for example, the aeration and outfall upgrades, and Greg, we talked about that a little bit. I just wanted to leave that in there as a placeholder because you need something, and it's so when I use the term placeholders, it's not that I'm throwing your money around, it's just that I'd rather put a number in rather than not have it there. Because otherwise it looks too rosy. Although there's some, basically some blanks that need to be filled in, like one that comes up is the dam, there was like a dam fund, an annual fund. We need to come up with something from that. I didn't want to just throw numbers in there, but, for example, the belt press, I talked to one of our engineers, and like, what do you think, 700? He's like, that's the right ballpark. But it just gives it some ballast, if you will.
It's all very flat. I mean, we have grant applications out for, I think we've got $1 million grant application out right now. We're waiting for an answer on for aeration replacement at the wastewater treatment plant. So
Right.
having the placeholder in there.
And I assumed your percent principal forgiveness was your same tier that you were before.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like 17.3%. So,
Right, but carrying that placeholder, and if we get the grant, doesn't negate that. That just means something can come up the priority list to fill in.
and right now, this is like, I hate to say unprecedented times, but I talk to people like, yeah, they get 8 months for pipe, and you can't get stuff, and then when you do, it's 5 times more than it cost. And what you just said about fire hydrants, so they're what, $3,000 now? They used to be $1,700.
Yeah.
You know, you apply that to 35 million, and it's really difficult to say what's going to happen. So, again, that's the, you know, long-term approach, and then you just keep, every year, you just kind of keep updating that. So, and happily, the updating isn't as hard as the doing in the first place. So this is, you know, just, again, setting expectations, and so you're the Board of Public Works, so you meet regularly, you know the system, you're involved with it, you're part of the team. A lot of times when we're doing this, it's for either a city council or a selectman, and they're just not involved with the day-to-day. So I like to use things like this just to show that, yes, there's, you know, big increases in expenses coming, and those need to be broken down or, you know, prioritized. And again, you know, it's a little hard to see maybe on the screen, but you can see it in the print. Again, I pull them out as different colors so that we can distinguish where the money's going. So it's just important to, I think, to be able to understand that going forward, rather than just see big pots of money that you can't tell where they went. So now, when we talk about projecting revenues, we don't actually project revenue per se. We look at water use trends and we project water use trends, and then we calculate revenue. And then when we come back to the revenue, I come back and I calibrate by looking at the commitments. And the commitments is the sum total of the bills for a year. So we're using the same rates, the same water usage from the water meters, and we should come up with the same number. And you can see here we were 1.2% off. That's great. That's well within the margin of error. And, you know, it's probably a little bit of lost water, a little bit of meters, a little bit of abatements, whatever, but that to me is well within. So down at the bottom here, we see this box here that 98% of your revenue is from sewer bills, and 93% of the sewer bill revenue is from usage. And what that means is that water usage is very important, and water usage trends are important, and they vary. And right now, you know, you got, do you have bands in right now? Like,
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so I hate that, because then it puts a kink in your demand curve, and it screws up your revenue, and so that's why I want all the sprinklers in the world to be
I don't like them for
metered.
a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
But
It's tough, you know, because it throws a kink in
Absolutely.
you know, your natural demands. So what we looked at for the water use trends is we took the ASR data, which is for water, drinking water. You are really unusual in that you're almost identically how do I say this? You have the same amount of water customers as you do sewer customers. It's really common to see, you know, sewer be 50% to 75% of water, because water is easier to run.
Yeah.
But so, even so, I use water use as a trend because it eventually becomes sewer, you know. But in your case, it's really very close. So we take a look at the two. So hopefully you guys can see it between the screen and your handout there, that the blue ones are from meter data, and the yellow and black is from the ASR. So looking at the two, one thing that's nice is a lot of times now we're seeing this, we call it the COVID bump, that, you know, someone said they told everyone to stay home and wash their hands, and so you get this big surge of use, and then you're like, well, what's it going to do next year? Is it going to go down? Is it going to return? So in your case, it's actually pretty smooth, and looking at it, we projected, you know, roughly about that orange line there, those dots, that's the projected water use, and we show it going down by 0.5% a year, and I showed the customer base going up by 0.1%, and that was just based on the last 4 or 5 years. So if someone knows that, you know, it's always Toll Brothers is going to put in this 500 unit, you know, whatever, we can add that in. But for right now, this is what we're projecting, and this is one of the key areas that you look at next year and say, oh, yeah, wow, look at that. You know, we came off the water ban and we used a ton of water, and, you know, whatever. It's always one of the most challenging parts of these is to see what it's going to be like, because you can even see back here in 15, you had a very high water use, then it went down, then it went up, then it went down, so it's based on best information. So then, and I even added the extra preliminary stamp. I was thinking of you, Thomas, when I
Yep,
did this,
thank you.
because I knew I just don't want anyone to say that's what we're doing. I just wanted to give you an idea if we schedule the capital this way. And I was thinking of you, gentlemen, when I was sitting at my computer doing this, because I'm like, wow, this is really challenging. You know, I would look, and right now this is balanced. We increased the rates to keep the retained earnings, which is the yellow line, at or above 20% of your operating expenses. So, since it's water and sewer, think of that as like your water tank. You're floating off of that. We don't want it to go too low, but yet if you had one big project that was gonna hit, we might start the rate increases early to build up that reserve and then do a spend down in a more moderate rate increase. Or put another way, if you have this big giant rate increase or expense increase coming up, you can pull it forward and smooth it out over a couple of years instead of having 150%, you do 5.
Yeah, you prepare for it.
Right. And so, frankly, I went through it a number of times iterating myself, and for example, you would have like 2028 or 29, the red bar would be really high. I'm like, wow. So I go back over and I look, well, maybe if I can move that to 29 or 30. And as I was doing it, I started to feel that difficulty in making those decisions, because then I would sort, and we can do this after, I'd sort on priority again, and I'd sort on the year start, and you kind of just feel the tension and, you know, or the fact that the two are related. And it, you know, just sort of shadows the challenge of what you're doing. So, The other thing that's interesting is you run this as a combined enterprise, and it's combined, but it's separated in different parts too. Like the indirects are separated by water and sewer, but yet the I think the retained earnings was just one number. So because you got to figure numbers somehow, I figured the split of the retained earnings of the fund balance based on the respective budgets. So 70% for sewer, 30% for water. One of the nice things about a combined is you can be more flexible, right? If your water is pretty stable, you can use more of that to fund, you know, sewer projects because it is one enterprise. But because I have two different models, you know, I just split it up for that reason. So, yeah, so like I said, this was just one run through, well actually not one run through, it was a bunch of iterations in the background, but it's just a start to say, well, if we did this, and frankly, moving stuff around, it helps, but it doesn't help. You know, it's like you still got a lot of projects get done in a fairly short amount of time in terms of, you know, this amount of capital spending, but they can be rearranged, or, you know, you can look differently. See these red is what we were calling rate funded, but you could say, all right, we're gonna take these 10 projects and debt them and combine them. You know, so there is flexibility, and you know, that's something I haven't gotten into with your finance director to say, well, what are their preferences and, you know, that kind of thing. So there are other ways to do this, and I think we also talked about ARPA. There's none figured into this right now. So if that changes, if the grants change, if, you know, all this other stuff changes, then this is all fungible. And the infrastructure, there's so many unknowns right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really challenging time to do this. So, to that Clay's line, this is easy. The water is pretty straightforward. Like I said, same idea, same thing. There's, you know, quite a few projects here, but it was easier. And these are not, because there weren't as many, I didn't aggregate them. We can do that. You know, and I tried to maintain the same priorities that were, that we established. So this does show that priority. And so we had 1, 2, and 3, and we had so many ones that like, okay, we have to go to like a 1.5, because I didn't really want to change the you know, too much from what Diane had, but we kind of put a stutter step in there, so we could at least space them out a little bit. And when we go to the model, I didn't put it on here for some reason. I can show you what that priority summary looks like, and it's a lot of it is, you know, reasonably high priority. So similarly, show the breakdown, where's the money going? Most of it in water is the distribution system, which is pretty intuitive. And, just thinking about that is for the sheer complexity, again, you can't tear up the whole town or the whole city. There might be some advantage to doing water and sewer projects together, and then do the 3R on the road or whatever it needs, and then, nobody's gonna open that road for a long time. So that's something that can be, from like a complete streets mentality, get that in there. So again, looking at expenses, the expenses are less on water, but they are, showing, going up 100% over 6 or 7 years. That's just the nature of the industry. Similarly, the rate increases here are much smaller. Again, same caveat, same assumptions. I think that the prioritization wasn't as hard for this, but, I'd want to get, water's feedback on that. And then cost impacts and affordability. This is always a mixed bag in terms of how people perceive this, but what I like to do is show the cost in dollars for a customer, for a typical residential, and we don't say average because averages, some people use a whole lot of water, some people don't use hardly any. So I took 3 people using 60 gallons a day, which is 60 is like a national average. 65 is the state's goal for water conservation, to be under that. And I think your actual is, on your ASRs was less than that, but I'm always hesitant to use something too low. But anyway, after all that, projections and slides and calculations, this is dollars in what we think would be an annual cost. So we look at the top and we say, okay, for water, it's gonna go from like 300 to 400 over the next 6 years. Sewer's a little more difficult. It goes from 480 to 1100. Again, that's with, that's based, this is all dynamic. You change one part of it, everything else changes. But the challenging part is you look and you say, okay, down at the bottom, we showed our 2017 sewer survey and water survey. The average cost of water in 2017 was $595 a year.
Not for Easthampton, correct? Just
No, this is for,
That's what I'm saying.
yeah, I'm sorry. no.
Publicly, yeah.
Yeah, this is, gosh, I forget how many systems were in there.
Yeah.
And the
So
most,
a community average of communities.
well, an average of all the responding systems
Right.
is what I can say. And
In
this-
Massachusetts or not?
Yeah, this is Massachusetts. Time bond, I'm sorry, I should have said that. This is from our 2017 Massachusetts Water and Sewer Rate Survey. And, it's the systems that responded. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but we get a decent response. It is the most aggravating part of this whole work is when people want to compare rates. Because if you're comparing your rates and you have a surface water treatment plant with tricky water, and you're comparing it to your town, in Massachusetts, there's like a big town and small towns. That's how it goes. And then you go over here, there's a big town and small town. That small town is basically pumping water out of the ground, putting chlorine and fluoride into it and sending it out. That's cheap. Or if they've not done anything forever, they're gonna be cheap. And if you have someone that just did an upgrade, they're gonna be higher. But having said that, this is an aggregate, it's on average, that we look at that $400 in FY '27, and that was, between 2006 and 2009 for the average. It's not, I don't know what to say, it's not like an absolute, but it's a relative thing.
Mm-hmm.
And similarly for sewer, the average in 2017 was $862, and we wouldn't get there until, FY '25 to '26. It's a long way, a lot of words to say you're behind. And that's one of the more challenging things to get by on. It's, I liken it to our first year I was married. We didn't have enough money taken out of our checks to pay taxes. We had to pay taxes, and the accountant's like, well, you've had that money all year. And my wife didn't feel that way. She didn't feel like she'd had that money all year. It's like, I have to write a check now. So, and that's kind of how this is. So that's that's basically the situation. In terms of, so then I did look at, affordability. We'd like to show the cost in dollars because I think that's the most relevant to decision makers, right? But then we also, I don't like to use, Starbucks coffee, cell phone, anything else, because it really leads to not good conversation sometimes. So what we use is one of the industry references. This replaces it's intended to replace the EPA's cost evaluation formula for CSO separations, and it's sort of been adopted by the water and wastewater industry. And this is an update that instead of using the median household income, which is just a kind of a weird thing to look at in a community, it uses the lowest quintile, which is the lowest 20th percentile. So it is the more people that we're concerned about. It's the lower income, the working class, elderly, all that stuff. And you take the total for here, so this is the total water and sewer, and you divide it by that lowest quintile. And I did not escalate that. So I think the number is probably from 2018 or 2019. I just kept that number the whole way because it's more conservative. So throughout this whole thing, I try to be conservative low with revenue, conservative high with costs, so that any error's on the black and not on the red. And the same thing here. So I kept that, God willing, everybody's income goes up a little bit, but for this purpose, I didn't. And so we take this number and you enter this chart, and that enters here on the horizontal, and then on the vertical, it's the poverty prevalence indicator, which I didn't come up with it, but it's the percentage of your community that's at or below 200% of the federal poverty level, which is another indicator they use for entitlement programs and subsidies and things. And you're at 19.9%. I did not give you the numbers, but that puts you in this first category. And we see here that at the top, meaning at FY27, the highest number is less than 5. So it basically shows, in terms of this, I'm not telling anybody, money's money, that it's considered to be a low burden. And I provide this because it is independent, and like I say on the top about the temperature, although today I don't think anybody would agree it was not hot, but people react differently to the same number. So rather than getting into you can afford this or whatever, we use this index, and at least gives you some comparison. So because at some point you will need to vote rates, like to show them in what the actual numbers are, and then somebody strongly encouraged me to look at Northampton for a comparison. So we can see we are actually lower. So that was water and sewer, 451 per 100 cubic feet, and water is...
Yeah, we won't even hit that in FY27.
Right, yeah, so you're less than Northampton, although I'm doing theirs next, so they may go up too, but that's where we are. In terms of summary and next steps, again, it's sort of, well, it just is what it is, I guess, that your water and sewer enterprises are underfunded or, historically have been. So there's a backlog of deferred capital and comparatively low water and sewer rates. That's, that they go hand in hand. And that the, rates shown herein are based on assumptions and illustrative only. And what I like I said, you can go back and forth. I was thinking of you because it's very interesting, because you can see as you change the scheduling on the CIP, you see those bars go up and down. And so you can go two ways. You can say, this is what we have to do, and this is what it takes to do that, or this is where we'd like to keep it, and what can we do to maintain that? And you can actually see them change under the curve, and I'm admittedly a spreadsheet geek, but it's pretty interesting to see how that does. So what I thought the next steps would be is to review that CIP data, and Greg, I wanted to go back and review some of that too, and see if we looked at the criticality or the scores that were identified, because that's you're sort of balancing, gee, how much do we want to spend versus what things do we want to not happen? You know, it's kind of how I look at it. If you don't do anything forever, bad things start to happen. So you look at the, you know, what do we think the risk is? What do we think the consequence is? And help that define your decision-making process. And then review the timing of the project, criticality, impacts of construction projects on the city. That's another one. You know, you can't be doing water here, sewer here, treatment plant there, you know, all at once. And then discuss projects labeled in-house. There was some on the stormwater side that I wasn't sure if there'd be, you know, additional staff time assigned to the enterprises, or if there was additional indirect costs or anything like that. And talk a little bit about the stormwater program implementation, even though it's a small part. It to me kind of felt, at least looking at this part, not looking at the other stormwater work we've done, felt like it needed some more definition in terms of when they're going to start doing stuff. Some of the things that were labeled in-house, I just want to make sure there's not going to be other costs that are needed there. And then, you know, again, this is the challenging part, but just look at, you know, is there an upper limit to what we want to put in for a ceiling on rate increases, on expenses. And again, it's very iterative, so you can say, all right, this is what we want, and then you come back and you're like, we can't make that work. Either we have to do this or we have to do that, and you make a decision and you go forward. So customer assistance programs, there's a number. There's a water, similar to the LIHEAP, there's a, I forget what it's called, but there's a water affordability program. It's a little confusing whether it's 1 year or whether it's multiple years, but you can look at that. We can look at circuit breaker to see if that would help. And then, you know, what I'm thinking is a, you know, Greg, not to assign you guys work, but to look at some of that criticality again, really.
Well, I think we've looked at that.
Okay, that,
I mean,
well, that's what I wasn't sure.
You know, I really feel like we have.
Okay.
You know, a few times now, so I.
Okay. Then you just got to look at, you know, is the timing okay? You know, the way it's shown, or do we want to, you know, at least have some questions or take a look at that and then decide how to proceed. And like I said, there were some I moved that, you know, just to make the, I don't want to say to make the numbers work, but just to try to even it out. And then I start to think, wow, you know, this is, you know, been pushed out till like 29, but it was a #1 project. So, you know, I was trying to think at first, and I'm just going to jump right over because we're talking about it. You know, I was thinking like, okay, how many, can I get all of the high priority projects funded in the first 3 or 4 years? And this is what I was talking about, that the priority 1 projects are 20 million out of $36 million. So how far can you stretch, you know, top priority projects and timing, you know, versus what starts to, you know, become problematic. So priority 3 is not a problem. It's easy. But, you know, I did start to, you know, push some out pretty far, and I started to like wonder, geez, is that going to be okay? Is that particular project going to be stable? Is that utility or part of the utility okay? The pump station eliminations were given a very high priority originally. Is that, you know, because they're in bad shape, or is it just because it's a savings, or, you know, that kind of stuff, just to beat it up? And I'm not suggesting that you guys didn't look at it, but it's just hard to get them all in there.
Yeah, I mean, I understand you reviewed them all, Greg, but was a 1 to 3 scale not granular enough, like that if, you know, 20 million ended up in each one, which I understand there are a lot of deferred things, rather than him just adjusting them based on, you know, smoothing out the curves. Should you and I or somebody take another look at this order just to say like, oh no, this one can't get pushed 4 years, you know, this, you know, is there a way to tier them so it's like, you know, this is deferred maintenance that needs to get done, or if this one fails, the plant is down kind of thing, you know?
Or at least, if nothing else, at least review the years that they're in and see if that's going to be acceptable. And then, like I said, there's a couple of loops that I wanted to close in terms of Other work at the treatment plant, is there a second project for that? Make sure all the pump station eliminations are funded. Some good news was some of the stormwater project costs were actually 5-year annual, so I got to divide that by 5. We went back and checked costs. I went back and looked at the priorities we had from the last go-round, and I asked Tracy to look at the stormwater to give me some definition on that. So some of those maintenance ones were not as big of a hit as it looked like, because that was intended to be an annual cost, not a one-time cost.
I guess the other point I would bring up for that would be if there are truly like 20 million that are extra high priority, then do we look at some of them not being rate paid and bundling them, like you said, if they need to get tackled sooner than later?
You mean like a debt exclusion or an
Yeah.
override? So
No, just like to bundle them and dump them out, like you said, you know.
Yep.
If we can't do it in as many in rate as we thought, if the time frame's too short,
So like
Is
this
there
pump
another-
station elimination project is $3.5 million. Like I said, I want to make sure that all the little individual components are covered in that, and there's not anything missing, and that, and some of this other stuff's really small. You just, kind of do it. Stormwater pollution prevention plan, annual costs, has it already started? Is that being funded elsewhere? That kind of thing. So yeah, that's, I think this IDDE plan implementation was partly in-house, so just want to make sure you got what you need there. So,
yeah.
like I said, we're close. Just want to run that stuff by you, run the timing by you, fill in some holes, and then, and what I think you guys were thinking was like a 3-year set of, this is what we're going to do, and then we're going to continue. What you don't want to do is, in my opinion, is, I always try to balance this line is, that green line, they call that the rate slope, and I try to balance the here and now versus, something that's 10 years out, we don't really know, that kind of thing. And honestly, I like to try to keep the first one, ideally, is you kind of keep it kind of moderate, and then you go up, so people get a chance to get used to it, you're not just hitting them hard. But that was hard to do here. So I had to hit it, 15% right away. The percentages are tricky because it's a relatively low dollar amount, but it's a higher percentage amount, And I've had that where people get, they're red in the face because they're seeing all these numbers. You get to the end and like, oh, that's $50. Oh, well, so
That's where I think the affordability that you showed is extremely important, because we're building the rates in, yet staying fairly low. If you're looking at, we're between the water rate stays the average what it was in 2007. It's 15 years ago.
And that's just part of the messaging, to roll this out, that, frankly, it's the same stuff you see everywhere, is that this is not discretionary spending, this is not, something that we just feel like doing, it's stuff that needs to be done, and, again, to go back to that very first slide in the beginning, as far as the DPW goes, your goal is to maintain your level of service, which includes regulatory and, all your requirements and what the customers expect in a cost-efficient manner. And that's, the rest is, it needs, you have old infrastructure, sewer is very capital intensive. I think one of the harsher environments you see for equipment and buildings and this, it's just a tough, you see a 2-year-old pump station, it looks like a gorilla ripped the door off the hinges, it's just that's the nature of the utility. So that was a lot.
No, but it's much more polished and digestible than the last round.
And it's, like I said, everything here is fungible. Literally, it's designed to, be fluid.
So maybe the question is, with the board having seen what you presented tonight, how large of a rate increase are you willing to discuss over the next 3 years. And that's, I mean, you don't need to answer that right now, but I think.
Or how to define that, you know, like, what, you can look at peers, be careful with that, but you can look at, you know, a number of things. I think that's perfect. That's what I was thinking, Greg, because then, you know, because, like I said, I would adjust these and then, you know, be looking at the capital and you come back and, oh, what happened here? And then you keep adjusting the two, and if you said, okay, this is what we're going for, then you try to make that work. And then you follow that until it doesn't. And then you say, okay, we have to compromise on, we can't keep it at whatever, we're gonna have to go a little bit higher than that, is that okay?
Would you have an idea what the average rate increases are in the neighborhood communities? I mean, has it been 3%,
Unfortunately,
5%,
we haven't
10?
done, our last survey was in 2017. And not to go off on my tangent on that, but what I would do is, you want to structure yourselves, you want to look at cohorts, you know, not meaning like a system that's similar to yours. So you want to make sure they have their own treatment plant, they have their own, you know, and then you can look at what they have. And, you know, because you just brought it up, we're about to embark on our next rate survey, and one of the things I thought about was to try to capture how much capital spending they're doing, because it doesn't help if you're looking at a totally different system that hasn't done anything, or they're just done a lot and now their rates went up, you know. So we can do that, and you know, I think that,
I mean, that's valuable to a certain extent, but I also don't want to get trapped in, it was one of the things that came up in the public hearing last time was, you know, we heard a lot about, you know, we've never seen increases like this, you know, we've always only gone up a nickel or so, it's always been a few, but that's what got us into this problem.
Exactly.
That's why I mean, not that I want to say we want to jump to the community average, but the reason we're so far behind, both on capital improvement and our rate structure, is because they've both been neglected, you know, to me personally. So, I mean, when you say, like, what can we as a board entertain and what do we feel the upper limit is, I think that's the wrong approach. I think we need to figure out messaging to explain to the community, this is where we need to get
Mike's
to have a
done some of that
sustainable.
here in the affordability that he showed.
I agree, and I think there is great messaging in this that we can use in public workshops and meetings, but I don't think we should set an arbitrary, like, I don't want to see a rate increase over 10%, period.
Yeah, no.
Okay,
Like,
no, I would agree with that.
I think we need to make the case of.
I'm not comfortable with that either.
What do you
Like
mean?
setting, no, we can't just.
Oh, I thought you meant you
No,
were
I
comfortable.
agree.
Okay.
I agree.
I
I
see
think-
what you're saying now. I mean, if
I
we,
think our goal is to message, this is what we need to do
Yep.
to have a functioning system for ourselves and future generations
Absolutely.
of
Okay.
East Hampton. And if we get pushback on that, then I think it's more of an education thing. And if we need to defer stuff, or we need to bond or bundle and stretch costs over 20 years with debt a little more, then we work that out. But I think we need to make the case of, the system is in trouble, and this is what it's going to take to dig out, and we will do everything we can to get grants and other funding. But if we have to do it on our own, this is what the community has to do to get there.
ready to.
So I don't want to arbitrarily cut ourselves off and say,
Okay, that's great, yeah.
you know, as an example, like, we typically, I show data. My goal is informed decision-making by the, you know, the client's side. And I was in a community that was between DPW directors, and, you know, we were looking at projects, and they needed a new screening system at their wastewater plant. And when we were going to the public meeting, I asked the operator, I said, can you send me any pictures? He sends me these pictures of them taking these anacondas of rags out of this pump. He's got 3 pumps, one's already been at the shop twice, the other one's starting to fail, and they were deciding whether they should spend the ARPA money on that, or, like, you know, intersections or something. I was like, bad things are gonna happen. This is bad. If that fails, it starts filling up basements, and that's the difference from going from, you know, this kind of discussion to the public side. And, you know, we talk about, like, rusty pipes and stuff, but in that case, it was scary. You know, when I saw it, I was frightened, and that became, you have to do this now. Like, don't put this off, because you're gonna, you know, it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
And that's where we are right now is, what do you absolutely need to do? And, how do you get it done? And then how many can you cram in one period of time too? Because you can't, you don't have 50 people to be out watching and, working with stuff.
On that particular graph, that bottom, the yellow line,
Yeah.
that essentially shows the depletion of our enterprise fund. Is that right?
So you're at, this is another I get FinComs of like, you can't use that to subsidize. It's the buffer. I don't like to see it go lower than 25%. We can pick a different number, but I am okay with doing like this. This is a spend down, right? If you said I want to keep that where it was, then this wouldn't be 15, it would be 20 or 25, whatever.
Right.
So it
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah,
If we decrease the rate, then that comes down, we have to dip.
Comes down.
So if you, change that to 10,
Right,
then,
yeah.
There went the line.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're insolvent.
Or then you're going back and you're pushing projects off. And
Yeah.
then you come up and you say, hey, this works, and we're not gonna do that critical project till 2052.
But will it make it?
Well, and that's the rub,
Yeah.
Because you can look at something that says it was identified as critical X amount of years ago, and like, still critical,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No, and I don't want to be the bad guy that doubles operating costs, but I also don't want to be the chair of the board when the plant fails and
Right.
basements fill up with sewage, not to be alarmist, but this is our watch, and we've not been
And a lot of
handed.
these projects, the big ones especially, you got a year of design,
Yeah,
a year
no,
of
they're-
permitting.
Right.
These aren't.
Oh, yeah, it's not,
2
we're
years
not gonna
construction.
snap our
This is-
fingers
no.
and
They're
start
not
these
turnkey,
things.
but we got to start
Yeah.
somewhere.
And we have to have rates structured in a way where we can take on the debt service on the $13 million loan or the $3 million SRF loan. That'll have a forgiveness rate, but, we need to be financially structured to do it.
We're also showing, I don't know if it was clear when I was saying that, I'm showing a 5% bond rate for debt, non-SRF debt, and 8% annual construction cost escalation. That's
Yeah.
the best, that was the ENR's latest, or McGraw-Hill Construction.
Yeah, I mean,
We can't lowball, you can't lowball.
I
that.
can't, you put it 50%, it's just, it's so hard
absolutely.
to, you know what I
Yeah.
mean, like.
no, but you have to start somewhere.
Yeah, you're a plumber, right? So
Sure.
you have your business, you know what,
Yeah.
things are going up and things are crazy.
Yeah.
It's really,
Well, you can't go 3% and 5%, that,
right.
Doesn't get you anywhere.
Yeah. Have to
oh,
know-
to make that chart look better, but.
But then,
Doesn't help us fix much.
Well, I understand, that's what I mean.
Well, if we stop having water bans, I mean, then people could use more water. But it's,
That
it's,
is- not on the table.
this is the hard part, right? You're in
Yeah.
tough economics, you're decreasing water use, and you're, increasing expenses.
Mhm.
It's why,
No,
we
it's-
do this.
We've not been dealt the best cards, but this is what the board has
At
to
least
deal
you're
with. Yeah.
relatively low costs, your rates now. It's, even though
Yeah.
people react to change, they don't react to data.
Yeah.
So no one's gonna say, wow, look at that, that's, it's like, I don't care, we like it low.
Can you go back to the affordability?
That's still gonna be a tough sell, but that's
Yeah.
our problem, that's not.
No, but this is giving us
Mhm.
more
Yeah.
to educate, and I
Yeah.
think that's just.
It's like
gonna be-
benchmarking,
Mhm.
and we can benchmark tighter, so in between
Mhm.
rate surveys where we are, Greg, I'll say, look, give me 3 towns, I'll figure out what their rates are now, we'll look them up, it's not that hard, we'll
Mhm.
calculate it,
Yeah.
and you can see, because that's the other thing, you can look at one and, hey, look at that, in Northampton, and the next year you find out they're going up 15%, I don't know, I don't know, we're not there, but it's,
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think there is value in that, because some people are gonna ask, like, what do others pay, how do we fit in, but,
as long as we don't, and I get this all the time, people push on a community, why are they talking about, like, you guys play them in football? Like, are they like your rivalry or something? It's really more about finding a system that's similar to yours in a similar
Yeah.
situation.
yeah.
That's
Otherwise,
what's,
the comparison is not a valid one.
right.
And that's why I raised that question, just to get a benchmark figure.
Right.
So as we're plugging in these voids that we have, are we over, are we near, are we, similar to the other communities?
Well, it's interesting.
Not to say that we have to match them.
No, and, I do have other graphs that look at this, slope of this curve, compared to consumer price index. What was interesting is it did compare well to the ENR, which is the engineering, the construction cost index.
Right.
That's where the money goes, and it's not surprising because that's where the rate increases come from, is capital. So as the construction costs go, that's where the rates go. It's not, if you didn't have to do any projects, then it'd just be raising with your price of chemicals and energy and stuff like that. It's the construction and the capital, which is the most difficult part to both. It's expensive and it's hard to estimate right now.
And in a mature city like Easthampton, our water usage is gonna go down every year in general.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
It would be unexpected if it didn't.
Yes.
Yes.
So,
So it's not like we're putting in major
development.
developments and,
I wonder though, like at some point it's gotta taper off. Like
Yeah.
keep using less water every year, but that's what it'll look like.
yeah. But isn't that the national trend too?
yeah, from what we used to be, it's all
Yeah,
water
it's-
saving toilets and water use
Yeah.
restrictions
Right,
and
yeah.
low flow sinks and.
Yeah.
And as depending on the local economy, as
I'm not saying that's a bad thing, I'm just saying
Yeah,
that.
that's just the way things
That's
are.
the way the
We're-
calculus works.
Yeah.
If
right. So
if you're dividing by less every year, it's automatically gonna go up.
well, and that's the hard part is that
And so are operating costs, and so are,
water
Well, the
conservation.
top's going up to begin with.
and your
And then the bottom's
base,
going down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And that's the rub with, water conservation is that you use less water, but a lot of your costs are fixed. You're gonna have to charge more per unit.
All right.
And as people renovate, an older house, then all the fixtures are gonna use less water. and,
Absolutely.
So,
Mhm.
So in that slide, Mike, what are you carrying for FY '24, 5, and 6? What is the percentage of increase across those 3 years?
so for sewer, it was 15, 18, 18. And
18,
for
20.
and then for water, it
I was
was
looking at this
5,
the
8,
other day at
10.
home. I was like, oh my goodness. No, because you sent us the
Yeah.
regs.
Well, and like I said,
It
right.
wasn't, oh my goodness, we can't do this.
It's
It was,
very-
oh my
No,
goodness.
but this is the messaging we got to in the last public hearing,
Right.
when we did those actual handouts.
Yep.
Where I did the calculations of, yes, the sewer's going up 18, the water's going up 5. That's a net, arbitrarily, that's a
Mhm.
net of 12,
Mhm.
And,
No,
have to
that's true.
look, we have to,
Yeah.
the numbers are large, but then in aggregate,
And affordability wise.
and then when you actually put it in dollars, it's 18%, but it's 40 to 50 or 40 to
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
to that point, in some utilities, especially if it was another city, similar situation, we showed, instead of just having the percentage, we had the dollar increase for that residential customer there too, so that it doesn't, because, when someone sees 5%, they think, well, I didn't get a 5% raise, so why are you getting 5% more? Just, that's how.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
You have to relate to the.
It's
No, but
natural
I
to
think
think
we'll
that
do a
way.
It is.
similar
people to
thing like
think
this.
that way.
This is a 20-page
Yeah,
document.
if you can get it down to 18.
But we'll do a similar thing where we have like the one-page flyer, which is the sort of snapshot of the critical things that we'll be voting on and that we're trying to convey, so.
Can you go back to show what those quickly break down to across? So say we did do 15, 18, 18, and 5, 8, 10. What is that?
That was on the one page before the affordability, yeah.
So that's,
I mean, you could calculate those percentage, but.
It's
I think it's just
3,
easier to
4,
understand.
5, it would be 180 something to 300, it's like $100 a year, basically.
So,
For both.
on a $900 bill, it's about 10%, But we can get that number as that's what we had on those handouts for the previous one.
$100 a year is $25 a quarter.
Yeah.
Did you do that again?
I did that.
Now I see where Alex gets it from. When you're shifting there, it's also yes, this is the money, people, again, typically look at it as like, well, do you have to do that? And that's when we back it up with, yes, this is why
Yeah.
we're doing this, because, and, most of your money's on wastewater, which frankly is harder to sell because it doesn't, make your life better at
Right.
your house.
Yes.
But it prevents, fines, a consent order, that would force you to do this stuff in a specific time frame. There's all kinds of bad things that happen when sewer systems don't work, so. But that's part of that messaging that comes in then, is why are we doing this now? What are we doing? Why do we need to do it? And then how much does it cost? So,
I mean, it's breaking out to about $7 a month for the average water. It's water and sewer.
just don't compare it to Starbucks.
Just,
I feel like Sally Struthers when I start doing it, 30 cents a day,
on the high end, it's $7 a month.
Yeah, it is, and there's a lot of mitigating factors. There might be some, the infrastructure spending, still waiting on that, see what that looks like. So, but I would, and I'm not gonna lie, I was thinking about you, Thomas, that we can do like a live thing where you can say, let's look at some of this stuff, and you can do, some back and forth, or
I mean,
same thing with you.
We can maybe do that in a workshop or two.
Yeah.
When we get to the public hearing, I want to have,
Oh, yeah,
these
yeah,
are the
yeah.
rates we're voting on.
No,
you know.
but I want you to feel like,
Oh, yeah.
yes, that we beat this up, and that,
Yeah.
we made the tough decisions we have to make to do the right thing. Because you're at that interface between the utility and the customers. And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
That's why we're here.
that's why you get paid the big bucks.
Yeah.
So it is, it's good stuff. And I want you to feel, sound in those decisions. And we should just follow up on some of the numbers too, Greg, just to confirm and, that what I was seeing. And then we can also, you said that those risk scores had consequences for different categories too. We can look at, there's other components to this that, besides just the dollar amounts. That's how they were developed, so.
Yeah, with the IWRMP sort of had that matrix of
Yeah.
severity versus impact, sort of graded on a matrix.
I always think of P-Town all those years ago when they had a sewer failure in the summer and it was on the streets. It's like you get 10 weekends to sell ice cream and T-shirts. It's hard to do that when it smells like wastewater. So it's preventing those things from happening too, and that's why they look at risk and not just like the old days, 10% a year or whatever, just to pick the numbers. So what I would encourage you guys is distill it. I can see you're reading, thinking,
Yeah, no.
come back with questions.
Yes. Yeah.
And, decide what we want to do. One thing I didn't do was, if you want, we could show, because I know there's discussion about the stormwater utility, we could show, and actually I did show here,
It's on one of them.
so I broke it down by system, and there's stormwater, 4%, 4%, 5%, 20% in that 1 year. But, how much of that is relative to just stormwater? And my sense was it just didn't,
It doesn't.
it wasn't
seem to
worth
be
it.
that.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
it's actually pretty enlightening, and
Yeah.
because, before we were really, entertaining the sort of separate stormwater issue, because we didn't really have a grasp of what was it eating up 50%? Was
Right.
it eating up 30%? And now that we're kind of tracking it, at least I'd say before, within the term of this capital improvement plan, I think you can still comfortably manage it within the,
Yes.
I mean, even though I know that's an abstracted cost.
It looks like
within
it
a-
may adjust going forward but
Where it warrants it, so.
I
but that's-
think we have enough
But I think
other
that-
items to deal with.
That's exactly what I was getting at, that I don't think we need to waste time in this iterative process to start
And
that.
frankly, once you get in through your IDDE, then you might find, whoops, we got to do this, we got to do some mitigation or whatever, and that might
Right.
change your idea then, but.
Yeah,
Right,
there may
right.
be a point where, yes, when it's 15 to 20% of the budget, does it get managed itself?
And since you already have water and sewer in one enterprise, why split stormwater separately,
Well, at least where the
Yeah,
money
but we
goes, but
could
how,
fund it separately.
how how do we get that money into the
Right.
enterprise fund? We could do separately.
I
rather
wouldn't split it anymore
now that we have the one pot to work with,
Yeah.
but as of right now, yeah, if it can be managed
Just
within
me,
the,
just my opinion.
I believe it can, and I think we'll continue the strong work we do towards finding grant funding opportunities for work that has to
Yeah.
happen. And
yeah, I think right now we have enough capital projects that should be our priority and not worry about tracking down a separate stormwater mechanism till it, becomes, that's 20, water's 30, sewer's 50, and then do they get managed separately, but.
yes,
Additionally too, we could look at them, water and sewer more combined, and, because I'm just thinking about, they really are one enterprise, so you
Yeah.
could shift, and, if we pushed out some of the water stuff, it would give you some of that availability to do more sewer, or to reduce those.
But they were all HP1s, right?
this is the problem, yeah.
You can't-
This- I mean, we're talking about pushing out projects that we discussed as priorities in
But
2015.
I know in these, we have the steep curve, and then by FY30, it's stable. And that's really just speaking off the cuff here, that's just normalizing where we should have been for quite a while.
Right.
The curve slope's only so steep because we're trying to get it done in 4 or 5 years, when ideally that would have been the last 20.
Yep.
And I was making, I don't want to say decisions, but I was afraid to come with a 50% increase in 1 year. I wanted to kind of
Oh, yeah.
balance it and then say, well,
Mhm.
let's, make sure you guys are good with this. Because like I said, it was
But we're not
challenging.
doing, I think the increases that you're showing are going to allow us to really get.
As
get
long
some
as you're
projects.
comfortable with his reprioritization to make that curve,
Yeah,
that
we
slope.
worked at length on it.
Okay.
With all my entire staff of
Right.
supervisor. and
I mean, if we do
engineers.
nothing, they're not getting done.
Mhm.
So if it takes 4 years to do them, at least they're on your agenda, and
Yeah.
you can,
We just need to get them laid out financially now
Yep.
so that they can happen in 4 years.
but we can also, like you said, use them as placeholders. If something that you hope to do 3 years out suddenly says, this is getting done next year, then,
You can always
We
swap.
can
Or
horse
we
trade.
found a grant for this
Right.
or that.
That's a good point, is that you have whether,
We have
'cause
a-
I did change some of those years, just to be clear. And if you said, well, no, that can't wait, but this can, you can just sort of swap it out. And it's,
We understand things
you
are going to have to, and we'll do it.
It's-
Just
you
keep doing what we can with what we have.
can't do 25 years of deferred work
No.
in 3 years, so.
I guess another way, sometimes when I think about it, is you're at this level now, you need to get up to this level. That gives you the ability to do the stuff that you need to do. And, sometimes the specifics can change. It's just that in general, you need to be at a higher,
Yeah, regardless of the order we
spending.
do them in,
to a degree.
yeah.
So,
It's good info.
No, very good.
and the other thing that, I like from your perspective, like, I know you a little bit, is it's data driven. You know what I mean? And it's,
Has to be. I mean, I know it's emotion-based as well, but it has to get done. There's no, these aren't,
They're not going to be easy conversations with them.
no, they're not vanity projects, they're not elective projects, they're, we just have to,
no chrome wheels.
Boutique schools? No, I didn't say that. Sorry.
And what was interesting, I thought you were going was an override, and I've had communities say, that aren't fully served on both, say, wow, we shouldn't just be paying, and I totally agree with them, because even if you're not on the system, your kids go to schools and whatnot, and we'll look at the tax impacts. Okay, so that's gonna raise your tax, and it'll be the same, it's like it offsets the same amount. And it's not, I don't wanna say it's that hard, but you can calculate what your residential tax rate will go up by, because you're deferring some of it onto
yeah.
the general fund,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's.
but it's the
there's-
same money, and it's the same community paying
right,
for it.
Yeah,
so.
exactly. There's no, I don't want to say there's no free money, but that's not free money.
Distributed differently.
Right, so,
So Greg, there's always a chance of a grant on something like these things too, right?
Yeah.
I'm just throwing that out
Yeah,
there. just,
we're after every grant opportunity we can.
Oh, I know that. I
apply
know
for, so.
you guys pursue that, but
Right. But even if you got one, we would just pull something forward.
Well, yeah, no, I
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
mean it would just, but
Yeah.
it would help
Oh, yeah.
flop things around. No, it would, but it would pull everything forward. perhaps.
Right, if we already had the rate structure in the capital
Things
plan.
could start flattening out quicker.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, at the
Right,
tail.
that's what I'm, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
just-
we wouldn't reevaluate and be like, oh, next year we actually only need to do 15.
Oh, no.
It would be like,
No, yeah.
we can pull this
probably-
27 project that we pushed out 2 years more than we wanted back up.
And the tail end of that curve starts coming in.
Yeah.
If you find alternate funding or do something different.
Yeah. Probably 4 or 5 years of fairly significant rate increases and then things.
And then we go into a nice O&M status where we
There you go.
we do
Asset
preventative
management.
maintenance. Yeah, we do preventative maintenance, we find out end of life and
Yep.
plan for it.
You guys were good with PFAS, right, on the water side?
Not gonna say.
Well,
Don't-
unfortunately, the irony is that that's where a lot of the preferential funding's going.
I
You
know.
know, like you could get other stuff done, you know,
Yeah,
under
we've
that.
been below,
but-
we've been non-detected below. so far,
But I was
so.
just thinking, we should think about lead service line
Yep.
replacement, you know, at
Yep.
least putting a replace filter in there. So, no, I feel like we've come a long way. you
Yeah,
know?
no, I think this is a much
Mhm.
better message than we tried to present in 2020. Albeit 2 years later, 2.5 years later.
Hasn't been the simplest couple of years.
Exactly.
But you've managed well, and I mean, honestly, I think we're in a better place than we were 2 years ago. I mean, our retained earnings are better, like,
Yeah.
you've gotten a lot done on your own
We are, we're trying.
without having a capital plan or rates designed to fund it. You guys have really knocked quite a bit off the list.
Yeah.
For a relatively small crew too, is what it feels like, you know, like,
Yeah.
not like 50 people, it's good stuff. And that's part of what, you know, is part of the messaging too, is that, you know, I spend this money like it's my own, you know, like I sweat the dollars and, you know, and most of this is designed to flip to that public side. Like, why are we doing this? What does it cost? And we just need, you know, maybe some definitions or, you know, stuff
Yeah.
that's probably available of why is this so important? Because if that happens, this, you know, happens, so.
Well, we're gonna need answers to that. Those questions will come
Yeah.
And I can show people, I mean, I can
Yeah.
show, I mean, there's places I can take people, there's pictures of things I can take. I mean, this
No,
isn't,
it's not,
That's what I'm saying, the picture of the, literally, they were like this big around of
Yeah.
rags, pure, and this was not
Yeah.
a big town, coming
Yeah.
out of this thing, like,
on.
oh my
Yeah,
God, that's
yeah, I mean,
crazy.
I'm kind of looking forward to doing it. I want people to have more of an understanding of what goes into keeping the city functioning,
Absolutely.
whether it's water and sewer
Well, I mean,
utilities or,
I mean, not to be over dramatic, but I think we need pictures of like I know you've done outfall surveys,
oh, absolutely, yeah.
like just to show the deteriorated of nature of the infrastructure here. That,
Mhm.
you know, when you guys do manhole replacements, anything like that you have that you think would be, you know, to show the conditions your guys see every day when they open manholes or,
Or have to dig up a new roadway because we didn't replace the sewer under it.
You know,
Yeah, we
that's
paved
when,
it. I mean, we just had to dig Clark Street
I
last
saw.
week.
Yeah.
when you look at
Sewer
stormwater,
lateral.
and some people are doing culvert asset management,
Mhm.
culverts really, but it's not just a stormwater conveyance, it could be your emergency route out of town, and all of a sudden you can't get a fire truck across because a sewer, you know, a roadway collapsed.
Collapse.
That's,
Right.
it's more, I mean, you know, it's. there's
no,
a
I don't
lot to
want to, I don't want to be alarmist, but I
No,
want,
but
I want,
these things are out there.
people just don't understand how neglected the systems are.
And what goes into making the water come out when you turn it, I mean, where it goes at.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of pieces to it.
I'm on my FinCom in my town, and every year when the schools come in and do their thing, I think, wow, that looks really complicated. You know, and it's the same thing, people don't know that how much effort goes in and how much
Right.
stuff there is, you know, how many doorknobs are at the treatment plant, you know, it's a lot of infrastructure, so.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mike?
Thank you for that. You
Yeah.
did a nice job.
Thank you. Well, I had Thomas on my shoulder.
Yeah, I'm always over your shoulder, right?
I could hear him. Well, what about that? And, yeah, so, you know, let's follow up, you know, next week and just see if you have any questions, thoughts, and see if we can fill in some of the gaps, and I'll send you the stuff that's not shown is what was included in those projects, just to make sure there wasn't, you know, oh no, that's taken care of here, or that's taken care of there. And I took off, a lot of the stuff was already done, it was completed, and that's something too I should think about, is you want to show that, yes, we are doing this stuff, we are, you know.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind a slide of, these are the things we've accomplished since our 2020 public hearing.
Right.
Sure.
You know, just to show what our department and what was grant funded, what
Wait a minute,
was.
just standing pat
What was
in
that?
between those
There's a
public.
fair amount of stuff
We
that
weren't,
take care of.
obviously, you're not standing, but to tell the public, we were not
Yeah, we-
standing pat
Yeah, yeah.
in the meeting. That we've been doing this, we've taken this off. Yeah.
We've
Since
gotten-
that 2020 meeting, has there been a lot done at all? Has there been a lot improvements since you've had that public meeting?
Yeah,
A lot by our own staff, not
Yeah.
huge
Right.
investment.
That's,
Not
I'm just thinking about how many things she identified
Not
as
capital.
either
There's a lot of
were
things we're gonna say,
done.
we did that, we took care of
We
this.
funded
These
it.
heaters have been upgraded,
Yeah.
these louvers have been repaired, that's
Yeah.
been.
Right.
yeah, things we could tackle within our funds and
Exactly,
with your guys'
with O&M
time.
money, yes.
Mhm.
And it's some relatively, I'll call them relatively small capital appropriations that the mayor's been willing to put forward over the past couple of years, but it's been uncertain times for the city also, so everyone
Correct.
going to are looking for,
Yes.
$1 million a year in capital expenses, so.
Just before we close this item, does anybody in attendance want to speak to anything? All right.
I'm good. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah.
So Mike, do you have enough information to put some of those one-pagers together? Or do you?
I mean, we can start to work on a model of that. I don't know if that, I mean, I was pretty happy with, you know, I went through many revisions of the last handout, so
Okay.
I'm pretty happy with the structure of it.
Okay,
I think we'll probably think about, you know, how we want to tackle this, and if we want to do a workshop where we actually slide numbers around
Sure.
and feel if if you've hit on a good solution, or if there's some tweaking we want to see before we prepare some rates for, you know, for public review. We can be in touch about that.
okay.
I would personally just want to fill in or confirm some of the
Oh, yeah.
the
no.
numbers that I weren't sure were there, and,
Yeah.
and not to drive you absolutely nuts, but I still want to make sure that some of the changes,
No,
if
I mean-
you know, like I said, you get lost in, well, there's too much in that year, you move something out, then you got to also then say, okay, can that move out? Is that okay? You know, so I'll prepare it nice and succinct for you. That won't
Yeah,
be,
and I think maybe we'll, you know, digest this, and then at our next monthly meeting in 2 weeks, we can discuss this internally in this meeting, and then
Okay.
if we want to have you back in a month, or schedule a public workshop or something
Why
And
don't we
then-
plan the first meeting in September?
to do another
Yep.
digestive.
By then too, we should have the close for 22 and know where
Yeah.
we're gonna fall, so.
Yeah, we can tighten stuff
Well,
up.
sometimes you're like, all right, you know, you went up and that helps, because that first year is what everything else flows off of. So if you
Yeah.
have 10% more retained earnings, then that, you know, makes everything a little bit easier.
I guess the other thing we need to sort of establish, whether we do it tonight or further out, is when we want to have rates set by for what implementation date. So we can work backwards from that. I know we've,
I think at this point, that date's probably July 1st
to have it coincide with budget.
with the fiscal year.
Okay,
change.
so we're not out of sync.
Is that?
You do quarterly?
Yeah, we go quarterly.
So in which case, if we wanted to be able to collect it on July 1st, we'd want to have them
Voted in
and before March 1st.
Yes.
So there's a full quarter of
So you're not
usage
changing the price after they use the commodity.
for the quarter that would be billed in the end of the year.
Yeah, so why don't we work towards that, having
A spring.
a rate structure that,
So if we want to have them in March, I don't want to have a single meeting in case we want to continue it. So we would maybe looking to start that in January or February.
a public meeting?
Public hearing. I mean, the actual, like, I think in the past, they've always just had a single public hearing, hear the public, and then vote on them.
Yep.
And I never participated in that. And I don't know if, I mean, it may be well received and we feel comfortable voting, but I'd rather have at least a two-parter.
Sure.
So we can present it, have public comment, we can digest that, and then come back, so.
And you know, people are people, right? So if you raise it a nickel, they'll say, I never would use that much water if I know you're gonna raise it a nickel.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I wouldn't have filled my
Yeah.
pool.
Yes, we want to have it in place by March 1st.
Right, so.
It's, even
yeah,
though they
so-
won't affect till July, it's still for that.
So
you
for
know.
a March 1st, we'd actually have to vote on it in February.
Yes.
you know, so they
Yeah.
were published for the metering starting March 1st. So yeah, we should have our first public hearing in January. So we'll work back from that. So that works for me. That gives us the rest of this year to workshop it and educate and
Yep.
come to consensus ourselves that
Mhm.
we're comfortable with rates that we're going to take to the public hearing.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Good stuff.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you very much for your
Thank you,
time.
Mike. Yeah.
No, thank you. It's good to, people are engaged and ask a lot of questions. It's good, you know what I mean? Like, you mean you're paying attention and people are involved, so.
This is a nice leap forward from
Yeah.
where that's how I feel. So. To the next step.
And we can all resign our commission.
Yep.
When we talk about asset management, I think of it as a constant state of decay.
Yeah.
And that's just the reality.
Race for the door.
Sure.
All right, with that, I will move on to item number 5, Director's Report.
Can you excuse myself?
Thank you very much for your
Yes.
time.
Hey,
Sorry
thanks,
for
Mike.
keeping you.
Thank you, Mike.
You want to as well?
Okay.
Note taker for this? Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
It's the longest.
I know.
HDMI
Karen's got
cable in
some,
the
she's
world.
got some nice stuff.
Not rate funded.
Leave that stuff for you guys.
Yeah.
you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks,
You all have a
See you
nice evening. We'll see you. Yeah.
Take care.
Okay, I'll start off with Union Street. Utility pole relocation work has begun along Union Street. You know, there's been some communication challenges that we're hoping to get kind of ironed out before the project gets moving much more. Last week we were notified of a meeting about utility relocation. On Thursday, the meeting was scheduled for Friday morning. We got out there Friday morning and there were telephone poles laying on the side of the road being ready to be installed. So it's really hoping to work a little bit closer with MassDOT and our engineering staff on communication flowing through so that we can get
Yeah.
what the information I can't get information to the business owners and residents if I don't have it myself. So we're,
Yeah.
we're working on
Yeah.
ironing that out.
I've seen the planning board trying to do some damage control on that and
Yeah.
get some messaging out.
We really
so-
are. Jeff and I and Mo from the chamber, Pat Rupp, Lindsay from the mayor's office met earlier today to really try to get things, get more of a system in place so that as information comes from MassDOT, we can get it to the right people. We're gonna work hard at doing that. It's been definitely, I'll call it challenging.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just a lot of, it's a mass, for the public's understanding, it is a MassDOT managed project. There's a lot of different companies, Verizon, Eversource, Charter, Eversource Gas, our water and sewer utilities, everything is, there's just a lot of different stakeholders, and not even to mention the businesses and residents on Cottage Street, or the multitude of people that just pass through town every day. So Cottage Street's an artery to get on it from Northampton to 91.
Oh, yeah.
It's just, we're gonna just try to do the best we can to communicate information as we have it. So I don't anticipate significant construction work happening on Union Street until the spring of 23. So I think we'll see some small utility pole replacements, test pits, minor traffic delays, I'll call them, until spring. So,
Okay.
Is this the project that began last Friday with the pole?
yeah,
Like, is
Union Street, yes.
Yeah, I was turning the corner by Biggie's and I was taking a left and I must have been there for 15 minutes.
Yeah, it was.
And I had no idea what was going on. There was no
Yeah.
signage or
Yeah,
anything.
I didn't either.
Not happy.
Yeah, we're at a,
I'm doing
yeah.
one of these things.
Yeah. Can you be at a utility relocation meeting Friday morning, 10 o'clock? Sure. There, and then why is there a police detail? Why is there, lineman trucks, multiple? It's,
Yeah.
so hopefully we're going to be able to get a good communication channel in place with MassDOT, and Verizon, and Eversource, and everybody. There's just a lot of things that have to happen before real construction can get happening. We're gonna do the best we can. So.
Good.
Cherry Street, I do have a little bit of a better schedule. We've reached out to Reyes Concrete, who's the contractor for the Cherry Street reconstruction project, and we should have a fairly decent schedule in hand from them by the end of the week. So they've been working on establishing a staging area, working with a resident in Cherry Street to use a portion of his lawn for most of their pipe and equipment staging. And we're working out a change from the ductile iron, cement line ductile iron pipe to the C909 plastic water main, because we are looking at, I think, the delay. The delay we discussed earlier this week was about 26 weeks for the ductile iron pipe to be delivered, and the plastic can be here 3 to 4 weeks. Myself and our water department staff are very comfortable with the 909 plastic. We use it for most of the repairs we make now, and find it to be easier to work with. In my experience, I've seen more problems with newer ductile iron pipe than I have with plastic. So
That was going to be my question, if there was any impact on longevity or...
no, I don't think so.
You're comfortable with it being...
I've seen newer ductile iron pipe end up with little pinholes in it. You got leaks you're chasing for years because you can't. They're too small to find, even to really,
Okay.
you know, where
Good.
it's coming up over here, but it's leaking over there because there's a pinhole in ductile iron.
Sure.
You know, any of the new stuff can have its issues, but we're very comfortable with the plastic. I think we'll see the project move forward more smoothly by making that change. So. But I do expect significant construction on Cherry Street to be underway by the end of this month. Very significant construction. I think they should be moving right along. So
Good.
I'll try to keep you guys updated.
And what the residents there, are they updated as well?
Yeah, we're working in conjunction with the planning department to do a lot of outreach there with
Good.
the residents. So we'll get something out to them as soon as we can, as soon as I have a better schedule in hand from the contractor. Stuff, we can get these contracts out. There's dates in the contract that allow for them to start, but it's got to work hand in hand. So we have to allow for their schedule to proceed as it can. So happier note from all the financial stuff we've been talking about. We did. You may have saw in the paper, but we did receive the Complete Streets grant for Holyoke Street to make the pedestrian safety improvements at Allen Street and East Green.
Yeah.
It's $286,000 from the Complete Streets program. So that, coupled with our Chapter 90 allotment and the Winter Recovery Assistance Program funding that the state's made available, we're going to be able to pave most, if not all, of Holyoke Street. We're meeting with our engineers and our staff tomorrow to. They've got some plans that just got out to us. Dan and Diane have been doing all the design. Our city engineers have been doing all the design work for that paving project. And quick conversation with them, looks like we're going to be able to afford to cover it, Holyoke Street from Cottage to just past the intersection with Allen Street with the funding we have available right now. So,
Wow.
We'll take a hard look at what it'll take to get it to Hendrick Street, East Street, Rocky Mountain, and see if that's something that I can work in the mayor's office. I'm trying to find funding for to do it all, to do the entire street. So
that's good news.
it'll be substantial.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to have that project out to bid in the next 2 months or so. I don't think, given contractor schedules and things, we would see construction this year, but ready for as soon as spring of 23 gets here. So excited about that. That's been a long time in the making. I worked with the planning department to find funding, got an appropriation to get the funding back to them and get the design done. And it was just a great example of us working together to find money to get a design in place that allowed us to apply for a grant. And then the city sees $286,000 come that, through a competitive process that we were, looked forward and got that together. So that's one thing. We also received a shared streets and spaces grant for a sidewalk snow removal track machine. I did a grant application back in February. I can't do my share screen in here, so I got I took a picture of it so you guys could take a look at
nice.
what we put in for. I was not very optimistic that we would get it. However, I put the application into the map of the areas we can perceive we would hope that we could take care of with it, and with the school opening and the new shared path that
Right.
may end up being there in the next couple of years, we were able to put together a pretty strong application, and we were awarded $50,000 from the Shared Streets and Spaces States Grant Program there. The machine itself is $67,900, so the city's portion contributes, about $18,000, and we end up with a very versatile track machine for sidewalk clearing, but we can also use it for.
It's the whole machine, not just the attachment?
No, it's
for
the
a
whole
piece of-
machine, yeah.
Not for something you
It's
already
a small,
own.
it's 48 inches wide.
Yep.
It's designed really for sidewalks,
Yeah.
but we'll be able to use it in the off-season, probably, hoping we can maybe get a mower further front.
Yeah, no, it's a
We'll be
versatile.
able to use it for a lot of different things, so it's nice to see that grant funding come through, that application going in.
Cool.
So I've been working with the planning department and procurement officer, surplus schools. They have not been officially signed over to the city yet. When they do, they'll become their preservation will become the responsibility of the building operations department, which is Michelle and I and one custodian. So,
Oh,
so
that's
that-
an interesting development. I didn't realize was happening.
yeah, so we are, we're working together with Mike, our city procurement officer. I had an auctioneer come in last week to take a look at call it old furniture, bookcases, desks from 50 years ago. There's just a lot of stuff that is still useful, but was not, I guess, useful for the new school. So we're setting it up to try to have the first auction of contents of rooms of the Maple Street School. Tentatively, that'll be held in October. One of the goals is to try to get the buildings as empty as possible for any potential reuse.
With the new school, I got a quick question. On the Rotary, do you plan on having a bike path for the students? Because I've noticed a couple of times where you got students on their bike, they're right around the edge of the Rotary, and then they come to the roadway, and then they're driving in the roadway. And I don't know if they're going to be putting in a bike path, like on the side where the football field is going to be. Do you know if there's
So
going to
what
be
we're
any?
working with, what we've been working on with the planning department is a Safer Routes to School grant for a 10-foot wide multi-use path to be installed down Park Street from Ward Avenue to the entrance to the new school. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think the sidewalk around the roundabout was designed in such a way to allow for them to be able to stay on the sidewalk on their bikes and make it down.
It's marked that bikes should use the sidewalk. There's signs there.
But there's a sidewalk on the Rotary, but when the Rotary comes to an end, it just drops you off onto the roadway
It does.
going
Across to
into,
the
and that's where I'm seeing students on the road. So I'm sure once school starts, you're gonna have quite a bit of traffic going there,
Well,
plus
there's a crossguard
bicycles.
there too.
Yeah. You're talking heading south, heading out of town or into town on Park Street?
Or down
south?
to the school.
Down to the school, so if you
Oh,
got
down those?
Oh,
Park
down
Street, you got the Rotary,
Yeah.
and then down into the school, so they're on the sidewalk. And when it comes to an end, they just take their bike and just plop it on the access road going down to the new school.
DPW has not been overly involved in that entire project.
Yeah.
As it was, Mass School Building Authority, Colliers, Niche Engineering, it just wasn't a public works project. So we've been brought into it a little bit in recent weeks on some of the issues that are going on with the access road paving, and just been kind of facilitating the passage of information between I'll call a peer reviewer, even though it's not necessarily a peer review process, and it's in the way that they're usually structured. But we've not a whole. It hasn't really been our, especially down if you're talking down in on the school grounds, not really in our purview.
Yeah, DPW wasn't
It may also
part
be
of
that
any of them.
it may also be that they're at a point in construction where they haven't been able to finish
Could
that
be.
walkway, or they need to still get construction equipment in on the football field. Haven't been, like I said, haven't been overly.
It's just that you figure there's gonna be a lot of school kids on bicycles getting to and from school.
Oh, sure.
And it would've been nice to have a independent bike path for them, instead of sharing a road or even a sidewalk.
That's a school department's issue.
Ding.
So, that, and then I also want to make you aware of this also, that we have been also involved in the preservation of the property at 75 Oliver Street, the former town farm. That the building has fallen into a state of repair. A lot of things happened. Smock Housing terminated their lease with the city, and we've been working on getting the property secured to preserve it for eventual rehabilitation should funding become available. For the most part, that's involved just securing it, we're winterizing. We're going to drain the sprinkler system and have the fire alarm stay operational for the fire department. And, one more thing, you may have saw in the paper also about Adam Robbins, our special heavy motor equipment operator in the
Yes.
highway department. We got
Number 3.
third place in that motor safety competition.
That's excellent.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I thought that was a neat.
Good
Out
hire.
of 70 people, he's been with us for a year. Great guy.
Mhm.
Came up, moved up here from the south with his fiance. His family, say fiance, wife. I'm not sure. They are. He's just been a great guy. It was great to see him go out there and be successful in that. So. He didn't think. I don't think he thought he'd do that well. And he really
He
did.
came
So
in with his little
they were pretty
trophy. He was
impressed.
happy.
Yeah. So,
Kind
Good
of
to
cool.
hear.
yeah. That's basically what I have for you guys for tonight. I mean, one other thing I did want to mention, just to touch on, we did get a couple calls today about the tragedy on Northampton Street last night. For the public or anyone that watches this meeting, in the coming weeks, I think it's important for people to understand that that's a section of state highway. We certainly would be supportive of any improvement that Mass DOT wanted to make there in any way that we could be. However, funding or performing any pedestrian safety or maintenance improvements on that section of roadway is not it's not up to us to do that.
Not available for us to do.
It's not available for us to do. It's not our road. It's state highway. So
Thank you.
Did you want to talk about New City?
I do have a
Yes.
couple. So the new city infrastructure master plan is moving forward. I knew tonight would be a pretty long meeting, so I was hoping to discuss this in more length at the meeting on the 17th. If you guys are available to meet. There's a few short-term action items, I'll call them, that I'd like the board to be comfortable with before we allow them to move forward. I'll send you guys this information, and we can discuss. Like I said, I hope we can discuss it then. But just to mention them, number one is repair broken streetlights. They surveyed the area when we had to put a stop on streetlight repairs because we were getting LED replacements.
Right.
So, to our knowledge, there is no non-functioning streetlights in the neighborhood at this point in time. There may be one that's gone out in the last couple of weeks or days that hasn't been reported, but as far as we know,
That's for the
streetlights are-
rest.
yeah. There was a suggestion to install a stop sign at Emerald Place in Dartmouth Street and Emerald Place in Lincoln Street. So that would be one of the recommendations, and then two recommendations to make Dartmouth Street and Emerald Place. Well, for the stop signs, I'll send this to you
Yeah.
guys. So,
It'll be a new item agenda, but
yeah. Installation of no parking signs, and some small things we can do, paint some sections to keep people from parking close to intersections, and then install pedestrian crossing signs at Ferry Street and Emerald Place, which is stuff we can do. Like I said, I'll get this out to you guys so you have some time to look at it before the next meeting.
Perfect.
Great.
Just want to make sure the board's comfortable with those recommendations before we go and move forward. There will be a presentation. I'll get the exact date. I think it's September 7th. The consultants will be coming in to do a presentation for the Public Safety Committee and City Council if you're interested.
good to know.
We'll have the exact date at the next meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's, but we'll get it to you guys.
Yes, we can roll it all into that agenda.
Exactly, yeah. So if we get into it now, it'll be 8 o'clock.
Not on the agenda.
And it's not on the agenda, so, but that's what I got for tonight, so.
Thank you. That's great. It was a very good meeting. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Good.
There's no other discussion on any of the topics we've touched on. I will make a motion to close the meeting.
Second.
Thomas Mulberry,
Yes.
David Fagnan,
Yes.
Steve Whitman,
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Excellent.
Just so you know, Huntington's going up on their water and sewer rates, $1 on